Today we are talking with Osinakachi Akuma Kalu about health and longevity in Africa. We discuss it from a variety of interconnected angles, including social connection, nutrition, movement, music, dance, language, and much more. This is a fascinating glimpse into the healthy ways Africans used to live and how the West unleashed darkness upon a once vibrant, thriving Africa. Here is my conversation with Osinakachi Akuma Kalu. All right, so today I'd like to talk about Africa, um, African health and longevity. Um, First of all, what are some of the big health or longevity problems facing people in Africa today? There are the obvious ones that the people know about, but what are some ones that you would like to point out and sort of redirect our focus towards?
Thank you so much for having me on your show, Michael. And it's a privilege and honor for me to talk about longevity and health in Africa because I think we've been organizing programs and we've been doing a lot of outreach events to understand how the people of African descent are hugely impacted by the emerging the twin light of 21st century with regards to pharmaceutical and with regards to health and wellness. So when you want to discuss about health in Africa, the major issue is how the people of African descent receive the question or the message of health. How do people want to relate with regards to health and all that? But when you look at it, the question, the recent statistical report that has to do with the average life expectancy gap for people of African descent is the determining factor. So it sees that Africans they have really moved out from. There are a lot of things impacting their life expectancy. um, you can talk about poverty. You can talk about lack of good knowledge about nutrition, and you can talk about the imperialistic impact of colonialism that affected, impacted the way that normally their ancestors lived, and seeing it as a primitive lifestyle and introducing another way of life that is really bad to their system, their biological composition, and leading to degeneration and deregulation, and thereby impacting their life expectancy gap. There is so much to talk about with regards to that. As we forge ahead in this conversation, I'm going to unpack them bit by bit.
From your understanding and your experience, have the approaches towards mental health and health in general in Africa changed from, say, I don't know, a couple hundred years ago or a couple decades ago versus now? A lot of the world doesn't really know too much about what is Africa like. How do they move? How do they eat? What's the medical system like? How do they socially connect? All of these things. How has this sort of changed over the decades or centuries, and what is it like now versus, say, more traditional practices? Or is it still, are these more traditional African practices still being embraced?
A lot of people always think that Africans did had poor mental health or a healthcare infrastructure, thereby suffering from a lot of diseases and all that. But no, when you look at a key explanation about health, which has to do with intrinsic capacity and vitality, you agree with me that Africa has the strongest intrinsic capacity and vitality globally. So they've passed through a lot, looking at the wave of colonialism, the wave of imperialism, the wave of slavery, and all that, how there were parts like Saidin and all that, they are still strong. And you need to agree with me that this whole event have a way of impacting the minds of people. And with the indoctrination of their healthcare practices, if you look at the history of Africa, you see that our ancestors never suffered hugely on what we call uh, health challenge, extreme health challenges, and that chronic and terminal diseases are just like new terms coming into Africa. We never had. We always aged well. When you study intrinsic capacity very well, we age very well. You can see in Africa a few years ago, you see someone at 80 going to farm and cutting plants, raking, and they farm from morning to night. It's just like from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. So that has been their way of lifestyle. So their vitality exposure is huge, and they turn it into a ripple effect. That they go there, they never had gym, but they use the farming as a way of gymming, and they had good mental health because Africans are they love communal way of living. They don't isolate. They have this sense of belonging, and that comes this idea of Ubuntu philosophy. I am because you are. You can find it in the works of Martin Buber. You can find it in the works of other. They try to translate it, but in Africa we have this kind of this philosophy of Ubuntu-ness because we need to reach out to our neighbors. We want communality. Everyone must belong in a community. You must follow the ordinances of the community. You need to reach out to others. It's all there. You see, in Africa, we don't have this idea that you see in the West where you place an elder, an old person in an old people's home. No, you must care for the elderly. You must be close to them as a family because you need to learn from them. You need to know how they navigated life challenges and problems, and it gives them a sense of belonging. And as such, they won't have mental health issues and they won't suffer from other infectious diseases that come with age-related conditions.
Man, maybe I should move to Africa. That sounds like my kind of place. But yeah, there are other problems, of course. But yeah, what you're saying is people in Africa naturally sort of socialize in this sort of safe, very connected way with one another. There's trust and there's help. People are not alone. People are not left alone, even in old age. So there's that social connection part, but also there's this natural movement, maybe the way we evolved to move, moving and exercising through work. You can talk more about these 2 points, movement and social connection, more if you would like. Maybe go into this Ubuntu philosophy more. Yeah, let's first see if you have any more ideas here, and then we'll move on to other aspects of health.
Yeah, social connection had been fundamental to people of Africans. Like traditionally, you don't Africans don't have things like fences. You don't put fence because traditionally, where we never had things like gas. I grew up where we never had something like gas stoves. So you make firewoods, you make fire through woods. So you don't lock your kitchen, you cook, take your food inside. So you keep your kitchen open so that because when you come out, you want to make fire to prepare something in your house. You need to check out where smokes are coming out the house, where smokes are coming out. So you need to walk to that direction to get some fire to make your fire. So there is this openness and intergenerational connection. So you must pay attention to details. You must attend family meetings. You must reach out to your brother. The social connection is so strong that when you don't reach out to family members, friends, they see you as a wicked person. Traditionally in Africa, you don't need to call a friend that you come in to visit, right? So you might be attending a meeting and say, oh, it gets late. You just have to say, oh, I'm in your area. So they need to make plans for you. You don't need to pray from them. So it's all about this Western notion of trying to be ethical. You need to be have some measures and standards that brought about so many wrong doings in Africa. I've already said that in some of my writings. If you check my Facebook post, you check my LinkedIn post, I talk about how Western lifestyle impact Africa. How people from the West and Europe try to build a standard for the world without being inclusive trying to tolerate the cultural background that bettered the people you are forcing a lifestyle upon. So we had a way of doing it. We had social construct that is so healthy, compassionate, empathetical, that you won't see people suffering from mental health. So there is this idea in the West where you don't intrude in people's personal life. It's not like that in Africa. Once your body language is not telling well, people need to find out what is wrong with you. People must they force themselves on you. They want to help you. They need to help you because they know there is this African notion in African philosophy. There is this notion that states this principle that states that a child is born to the community and not to the family. So it is the duty of a family to give a community a child, but it takes a community to raise the child. So a community owes a person a sense of belonging. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So the care for the common good is holistic. It is not on a micro level or intra-relational level. It is inclusive. Will give you that sense of belonging, and you feel the sense of belonging.
Yeah.
So tell me how someone living in such a society will suffer from mental health. It is this isolatory way of living that creates mental health, that creates the lack of being vulnerable to your society, that creates the lack of openness. There is no social group, there is no good peer group that allow you to be vulnerable to yourself because you see them as a family. So when you swallow everything, it impacts you psychologically because perception and impression creates an idea and you start painting a mental picture that might take you down the lane. So you need the support system, and the society, the traditional African society, was built in such a way that it supports everyone without impacting their mental health negatively.
And you're saying that this sense of community, this sort of natural way of living with empathy, of tuning into each other and helping each other and feeling safe around each other, etc. That's kind of crumbling down with this sort of invasion of the West or whatever you want to call it, or is it certain parts of Africa? Is it Africa itself? Kind of breaking down socially, or tell me about sort of the general view of things currently.
Africa is actually degenerating, but we are trying to build back this mindset that kept our ancestors together and that helped them to live stronger and better, right? So now people tend to be more protective, overprotective of themselves. People are now building with fences and they wouldn't want you to come in. There are a lot of issues that like people being scared of being assassinated or poisoned and all that. This we never experienced this in the traditional African society. So the idea of building, there is in philosophy of language, there is what they call referent and reference.
Mhm.
So everything that you see communicates something in your mind. So it triggers something. So when people start building with friends and where people no longer uh, live in certain way, it sends a message, and people you see people are now being overprotective, and this never happened not until the Western influence. And one of the dangerous things that happened with the Western influence in Nigeria, to be precise, is the attempt to abolish the teaching of history. So most people do not know their history, which make them to a kind of live a life that they think is original to them. And they see that life as a way of life, not understanding that every human person um, needs to understand their cosmology, culture, and tradition. Because if you do not understand these things, you might have existential struggles to navigate. Now, the Western influence impacted Africa's social construct, their behavioral pattern, because when you talk about the social construct of Africa or the way Africans behave now, You need to interpret it from micro level to macro level, because the man by nature, though a social being, translate the society from the immediate environment, the micronuclei, that is the family, but from the person and to the family, then from the family to the community, from the community to the society at large. So it's always like that, but there must be ordinance of reason, there must be order, and those order of reason had been there in the traditional African society, not until someone came and said, how you are living is not good. You need to live this certain way. And here we are today. They introduced a new way of living that they said our own traditional way of living was primitive. It's not even helping. There is no proven result, because it even avail this notion of man being a wolf to the fellow man. You become afraid of your fellow man. You can no longer see vulnerability as strength. You now see vulnerability as weaknesses. But I always tell people, even if vulnerability is a weakness, it's seen as weakness, weakness is never wickedness. So society needs to start rethinking certain things, and to see that for someone to be vulnerable to you, it means that the person trusts you, right? So that is how society, the traditional African society is built in such a way that you can be vulnerable to your fellow man, and which means that you trusted your fellow man. But what we are experiencing now is hugely not, to an extent, is never the way our ancestors live, and we are not getting the required results. So that's why afro longevity, we are trying to deconstruct and to reconstruct a paradigm, and to bring back Africans back to their biodiversity, the way their ancestors live, and to teach them certain things. If there are certain ways that we need to really mitigate or to improve upon, why not? We do that. So it's just for us to preserve our species and our kind. And if we can do that, I believe that we will improve the life expectancy. We will close the life expectancy gap in Africa and improve the well-being of Africans.
Okay, so one, Africans are being divided amongst each other, being left alone, and two, their sort of cultural and historical memories are being kind of wiped out, and I imagine being replaced by other ideas. Do you think this is intentional, or what is going on? Why is the West kind of trying to, maybe not trying, but whatever, causing people's memories of their history, of their culture, of their past to be kind of erased essentially, and being replaced by something else?
It was intentional, right? If you study the history, the colonial history and their mandate, it was intentional. And I always tell people that I still find it fascinating why the communique of the Berlin Conference is not public, not shared among Africans, because Europe and America knew, they just partitioned Africa, Europe, to be precise, partitioned Africans among themselves, and for them, it's is a dumping ground, an experimentational ground, and when they came up with different policies, you see policy of assimilation and policy of association being introduced, and they brought in tools like religion that's actually killing the people of Africa, and they're making them to fight each other. As you can see, the Muslim feels that their religion is better, the Christians feels that theirs is better. They abandon their ATR, African traditional religion, or what we call Omenala. So they abandon that to think that theirs is better. Some of these things impact the mental health of people, and also impact their well-being. So people are not thinking right, and there are a lot of mortality rate with regards to religious conflict and all that. So I also think that it is intentional, because the way Africans practice some of all these things, you can't find it that way in Europe and America. So they use those things as tools to bring in divisions among brothers and sisters. And you need to also understand that there was nothing like Nigeria, there was nothing like Cameroon, there was nothing like. So when they partitioned, they brought in those naming, and they brought in those things like so as to share equitably among colonial lands, colonies. They call it colonies, the British and the French colonies and all that, the Portuguese colony and all. So they partitioned it among themselves and say, okay, we're going to call this place West Africa, we're going to call this place Nigeria, we're going to call this place Cameroon, we're going to call this place. So you're going to be in charge of this place, and I'm going to be in charge of. So those partition, when you look at them, because Africans, they are not divided in country lines. Africans are divided among ethnic lines. So it becomes so difficult for that trust to be there, forcing me together with a different tribe or different ethnic groups, bring in this sense of I need to be myself because this person don't understand me. So this forceful marriage called amalgamation is also a problem with regards to the mental health, the social construct of the people of African descent. So there are a whole lot of things to unpack there. It was intentional, it was deliberate for a selfish reason. That's why they introduce um, policy of assimilation and association as part of the contract for Africans to go with what they call independent. And later they sign things like they sign things like Commonwealth and all that. Well, you can see that there is no Commonwealth. Africans, Africa is richer than any continent in the world. Mention any mineral natural resources that you can find in Africa, yet Africa seems to be the poorest because the control is still there. They still have huge influence. They decide those to be president in Africa. They fund political agenda. They ensure that the smart ones don't become leaders, political leaders in Africa, so that they can control them. So they give them the needed support and ensure that they still have direct and indirect influence in deciding who becomes your leader. So there are a whole lot of things to talk about. And tell me, when you have analog leaders in the digital age, how can you make policy that impact the 21st century with its accelerated growth and complexities? It becomes so, because the future is faster than you think. It becomes so difficult for you to understand. So they're creating more problem for the younger generation. So unless we raise more people that understand these basics, and people who are ready to be social entrepreneurs that knows how to identify problem, people that understand that they are also leaders in the area of functioning, it will be difficult for us to bridge these gaps. So we need to bridge these gaps before we accelerate the needed growth.
So what is the best way to kind of solve this problem? It sounds like it's this awareness, this education, this change in mindset, and that's perhaps what you're part of what you're doing. What else are you doing to kind of reawaken these memories, bring back the vibrancy and health and social connection and all of these past African traditions back to life? What do we do about it? I mean, we can complain and complain, and it really sounds evil in a way. I mean, in many ways, but yeah, what's the solution? It's not easy, but what are some solutions?
So we can always complain. It's very important to reawaken the consciousness to say that the effect, for there to be an effect, there was a cause, right? So, and we also need to work. We also need to work very hard. Education is key, and the sensitization is key. Outreach program is key. It's very difficult to disambiguate what people have accepted to be true for a long period of time. So, we collaboration is also key. So you need to form partnership across board. You need to also start kind of an educational system that you take the message home from basic. So because you can be it, there are persons that might some persons that might find it rebellious that what you're saying is wrong, and they give you references, citations, and all that. Yes, there must be citation, there must be reference, but where are we with those references? So you need to go back a little bit to history to check the lifestyle factor and how people live, the vitality at age 80 and the vitality of people who are living now at age 80. You compare and contrast. So we need to start relearning, and it takes a lot, including finance. It takes money, it takes time, it takes energy. You need to be very security conscious. You need to be intelligent enough, because the traditional systems are not smiling. They are ready to kill you because of you, because you speak in the truth. I did made a post on LinkedIn that led to some persons in the big pharmaceutical companies reporting my post, calling it false information and all that. So LinkedIn uh, permanently restricting my account, not until the people launched a lot of campaign in Boston LinkedIn, sending a lot of message for my account to be unrestricted. So it happened, and when you see that on Facebook, you see people reporting my posts, reporting everything. People from the big farm, then the big pharmaceutical company, people from the big foods, and people from the big government. I didn't lie. I just gave a historical account how the big food funded research in some universities, and it was taught in the universities, and which created some diseases and all that. And from there, the big farm now provides solution for the diseases, and which creates internal generated revenue for big government, because they will champion and oversee those things. So that is how it works. That's the game. So I was just saying, okay, can we now look at it to say, okay, this is the problem, how the problem comes to be, and we need to teach our people how to eat. That they need to understand that what you eat, where you eat, and how you live makes your longevity. Yes, everyone, including those in the big government, knows that ultra processed food is not healthy. Yet they market it, because they get enormous money from tax, and they preach that is good. They sponsor and approve false marketing, and it affects the health and the well-being of the people, and they make money from it by providing solutions. We need to also understand that added sugars and substance like that, our ancestors never ate processed sugar and added sugar, and they never suffer from diabetes. They never suffer from insulin problem. They never suffer for anything. Some of these terminal diseases that's becoming prevalent in Africa today never existed among our ancestors, because we ate stress food, we ate plant-based food, and we ate proper protein, and we never fried. Our ancestors never fried food. Our ancestors, what they did was roasting and grilling, so they never fried. So we know how nutritious these things are. So people coming to teach us, our ancestors might have failed in certain aspects, but not in nutrition. They understand what nutrition is. So we taught the rest of the world what eating and what feeding is, because humanity started from Africa. If there are people that needs to teach people what it means to eat and what it means to be healthy, should be Africans and not the rest of the world. I always say this, but people think that they know better and more than their ancestors. So unless the scientific evidence that humanity started from Africa is wrong.
You're answering like all of my questions all in one. This is amazing. I wanted to talk about nutrition. I wanted to talk about the medical system. Let's dig into both of these a little bit more. They are different topics, but they're becoming intertwined. But let's first travel back to the happier days, the more natural days. Yeah, tell us, kind of paint a sort of more vivid picture for us of how people ate, what foods they ate, how they got the food. Just kind of, yeah, get into the details of that if you can. And then also, how medicine worked back then. When people got sick, what was the medical system like back then? And then after that, maybe you can come back and compare it to the current reality, the current medical system, which I'm guessing is a bit westernized, but maybe not. And then we know the current food system, but you can talk about that as well. It's sort of like four questions in one. So you don't have to answer all of that, but just talk about whatever excites you there.
You know, the traditional system was natural, was naturalistic, and there was nothing like preservatives using the chemical preservative in storing foods. So it's either you eat it hink and nook, and I understand that sometimes the difficulties in evolution and population providing for population is no longer there, and that led to some other practice. But there are solutions through what they call vertical farming could solve some of this problem. But however, we need to understand that in traditional African, everyone had a farm, everyone has garden, and everyone must be a subsistent farmer. So you must have something where to get your food to feed your family, which is very important, right? So not until the white collar job, what you call the white collar job, going to office and all that. So we receive vitamin D every day, vitamin K. We receive sunlight every day. We are conditioned to the type of work and lifestyle make it so that you are exposed sun to the sun, and you do your work. We call it gymming, productive gymming. This farming under the sun and all that. So the food the traditional Africans ate were natural. Natural. If they want to drink, their wines were stressed wine, or what you call tapped wine from palms and orange. So we never found ourselves in a situation where people take cereals, grain for breakfast, and intermittent fasting that they are teaching now had been there, because when you wake up, my recent post I talked about when people wake up, they go to farm. The man goes to farm with the male in the house, and the grown up ladies, they go to farm. So the mother had to prepare breakfast and bring it to them in the farm. So they have to be working. They have to be working until the mother bring the food, and they eat, rest a little bit, and continue working in the farm till evening. So they work there and they cook in the farm, their breakfast in the farm, and then come back and then cook for their dinner and all. So it's always uh, we were never lazy. We were productive. We were eating naturally. So we eat from the farm. We eat natural. We eat fruit. So we were eating a balanced diet, and not processed diet that is labeled balanced. So we ate natural, we ate everything, and our treatment was herbal remedy. So we used herbal remedies for our treatment, but it was difficult for us to. Being sick was very difficult because we were eating well. What causes sicknesses and diseases is largely on how you eat, your mental health, and all that. So these are the things that leads to sicknesses and diseases. We never had terminal diseases, and it's rare. It's always once in a century or once in years that you see someone suffering from something that is strange, and it's always labeled superstitiously, and some persons will be like, okay, maybe the gods are punishing him for or her for the sins they must have committed. So it's always strange because they have seen something that they have not seen before. So, and my concern with the influx of chronic diseases is the epigenetic aspect of it, how it will become encoded in the cell, and the future possible impact on becoming a genetic factor that could be activated or driven in the next generation. So I'm very concerned about the influx of biological aging and its related conditions as a result of importation of processed food, ultra processed food, chemically preserved food, which impacts health hugely. So Africans naturally eat natural. African traditional Africans eat naturally, and they take herbal remedies for their treatment, and their wellness model or treatment model was hugely and largely holistic. And like I said, in traditional African setting, the doctors don't work on placing you on drugs, but taking you out from drugs. They don't condition to say this is what you need to be taking till you need to be taking it to regulate your BP daily, daily, daily. No, no, no. They work hard to ensure that they take you out from drugs because they know that it is not, uh, it shouldn't be part of your existence. You need holistic healing, and you need to be well mentally and otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, there's all these artificial things, health protocols and items and things that we bring into our life in the West. You know, we go to the gym to exercise, we take supplements to get our nutrients. We don't have sunlight. We have to get these artificial lights. It's all kind of like all distinct. We're not really it sounds like in Africa, or in the past at least, you were fulfilling all of these various needs like simultaneously. It was all kind of intertwined. You were working while getting the sun, while socializing, while getting the nutrition, while moving, while doing all these different things. It was all like a system of you were like working to fulfill your needs of being a human, and thereby you were healthy because you were living like a human. But now it's like we're living so artificially in a lot of countries, and maybe in Africa nowadays too, where like we still need the sun, we still need movement, we still need social connection, but we have to artificially introduce it into our lives, but it doesn't really fit. It doesn't really work, it seems.
Yeah, it doesn't really work. And one of the problems is that people tend to define misrepresent what being rich is and what being wealthy is. And for them, it also means being affluent and living indoors and being under air conditioning and being under heater and being inside spa on an AC and living large,
Everything's so easy and comfortable and
easy and
perfect.
comfortable, perfect. They don't know that they are creating more problems for themselves. So it's a little bit tricky, right? So we need to also understand what being wealthy is and being um, resourceful is. We need to redefine that and to encourage people to work out, to connect with people. Social connection is very important, all right? Very important, absolutely. And people need to also live closer to the biodiversity. I always say that come closer to your origin. You know, eat what your ancestors ate. Don't see your traditional food as being primitive. There are some person that say, no, I can't eat it. It doesn't look well. So they never understand that the palate is not a determinant of a healthy food. Most Africans, you can't find them being attracted to their local dishes. Some will say, I wish I can eat this. So it's always a problem, you know, it's always a problem. We need to teach them to embrace their biodiversity and eat naturally. And people, okay, before now, there was nothing like carbonated drink that causes cardiovascular diseases, that causes joint problem. You know, we had what we call the pots where we put water and the temperature of the water is normal. So it wasn't there was nothing like refrigerator. It's not our lifestyle, but you know, when they now people want to move from AC air conditioned house to air conditioned car, and they drink chilled water, and they drink iced water, they take cold drinks and all that. They don't know how it impacts their body system, their lungs, how it impacts their joints, how it impacts everything about them. But they want to feel good without understanding what feeling good is all about. So it's a whole lot of metrics and it's a whole. We have a lot to do, and sometimes it's also difficult to practice some of all these things, because sugar is addictive. Most persons are addicted to some of these foods. Telling them to stop eating those things, it's also a problem. So it's a gradual process. You can say, okay, eat once in a while. Before you know that, they'll live that uh, lifestyle. It's a baby step, but we are committed, we are passionate about it, and we are pushing hard in ensuring that we really get what we want.
And they're drinking that perfectly chilled beverage out of a nice plastic bottle. They're eating
Yeah.
that food that has, I don't know, talk about toxins, environmental toxins, things like plastics, pesticides, herbicides, chemicals. I don't know anything about what's going on with that in Africa. I know in the US it's kind of a hellish situation, but yeah, what about Africa with all these environmental toxins, chemicals, etc., all that kind of junk? What's happening with that there?
It's a new thing. I think it's just about, let's say, not until 1930 plus when oil was discovered in Nigeria and all that. And so, Share needs to apologize to a lot of people because the share oil companies and all that other companies, they seem not to be doing well with regards to environmental cleaning after pollution. So it's always tricky. And yeah, I wrote a paper that I presented in Germany when I was talking about Afro longevity, and I spoke about a lot and how what affects the telomeres and all that. I did mention how microplastics, uh, last 2 years, microplastics was discovered in breast milk, and how it's
Delicious.
affects the life expectancy gap of people from micro to macro level. And there are a lot of things. There is this kind of what they call heavy metal in health.
Mhm.
Heavy metal is a big subject and a big topic, very critical, and I'm finding it. I've been working around it to deconstruct it, but it's huge. So it's something that we never experienced in traditional Africa because we lived in our peristine state, and being in our pristine state and being close to nature, it's always difficult for you to experience some of this pollution and heavy metal impact. So there are a lot of people that are still experiencing this beautiful and natural lifestyle. For instance, I just lost my grandmother just recently. So, but my dad's mom is still alive. So my dad's mother, um, and my dad should be above 70 years or heading to 70 years, but the mom is still alive, still there. And we have this longevity in our family, and it's also there for everyone in my community and all that. So it's because they are closer to nature, they live naturally,
Yeah.
they eat naturally, they feel naturally, they obey social construct. If not kind of mistrust that have been brought in by religion and all that, it would have been better for someone to live in the village than in the city. um, I also think that it's not just about the the um, the microplastics and all that. People need to also be sensitized on personal hygiene, because when you go out, you contract some of those problems. You need to come back and clean up very well and ensure that you are in good shape, and because we can't change the hands of the clock. So the evolution of humankind is already there in motion, and things are changing fast. You can't stop the wave of heavy metal that have come to stay, but we need to mitigate it by planting trees, ensuring that we have clean environment, we drink good water and all that. But today we don't have borehole in my community, in my town, in my village. We still fetch from stream, but those in the village still live healthier and happier than those in the city that are drinking from taps and all that. Isn't that surprising? Yeah.
Yeah. Let's you make music, I believe, right? Let's talk about music because music has been shown to be a very healing force for all kinds of mental health conditions. Just for anybody who's just technically healthy, music is a healing force. Um, can you talk about how about traditional African music and has that changed? And combining this with music, let's also talk about dance. When I see African dance, I had this friend in university. He took an African dance class. Cultural appropriation. I'm kidding. But he started. It's like a lot more movement. It's a lot of shaking and moving, and is much more kind of emotional and yeah. Just there was more movements. I felt like I'm not the expert on this. I didn't take the class. I just watched my friend. I watched a few YouTube videos, but yeah, talk about African music, African dance in the past, and compare and contrast that with the present. And maybe you could talk about why it's important, or maybe why it's not important, and I'm going off on the wrong trail.
African music and African dance never changed.
Good.
There is hip hop, there is whatever, but you cannot just change African traditional melody. You can't change African traditional melody. African traditional melody is there on its own. It evolved into what people now call Afrobeats. Afrobeats that because African traditional melody, they are always revolutionary. They are all there to teach people about the history, and you dance them in accordance to the rhythm and the time signature, the tune signature. It is therapeutic. So it is a kind of the dancing is a demonstrative attempt to interpret the the music. So the dancing is a kind of concert to translate the music, and the dancing must be in sync with the time and the beat signature used in composing the music. And the dancing is a kind of a reminiscence of what the music teaches. So ATM, ATM, African traditional melody, is unique in its own, and it's also there. Nothing changed. It is just there, and there are a lot of persons. For me, I love African traditional melody and all my compositions. Although it was a little bit of religious composition, my composition used by Catholic Church and all that I compose. But music inherently is therapeutic. When you're stressed, there are the type of music that you listen to. When you're sorrowful, there are type of music you listen to. So it brings upliftment of the soul, so it comes with healing. So when you want to triumph, when you want to go for battles, there are music. Like there is those people called Ohafia. The Ohafia people have their Ohafia war dance. So that's what they use, the music they use when they want to go to war. And when they are stressed, their music that they use, it creates a kind of it rekindle a kind of spirit within them, and that's the impact of music. And I love ATM, African traditional melody, because it's unique in its own, and the dancing is somehow like a workout. So you have to exercise your body, and you dance, you sweat and all that. So it's very important, it's unique, nothing changed, although there are a lot of influence, and they want to make it dance, a kind of dance. The only thing that changed is the moral aspect of African music, where the rocking is now, the club rocking is now tried to um, be introduced into African traditional melody, and those that are shooting the the videos want to make it more Western than. But however, when you look at those that try to stay traditional, there seems to make more sense when listening to Afrobeat than people that want to bring a simulation or trying to move out from the way it is being made to, you know. So that is it. Yeah, that is it about music. It's healing. It brings healing. It's therapeutic. It's unique. It's also very important for us as Africans because it resonates with your spirit self.
It's interesting because I mean, in people with dementia, Alzheimer's, for example, music is one of the things they do not forget. If you give some 80-year-old person in any country with who has Alzheimer's, for example, and you play their music they liked when they were young in their history, basically, and when they were in their life, they remember it, and then their memories come back to life. So it sounds like something similar is happening on this larger cultural level. You can maybe wipe out certain kinds of memories in Africa, but you can't take the music out of Africa. That's really hard. You can't take the dance out
Yeah,
of it.
it's
And if so, however hard they try, even if they wanted to do it, I mean, could they? I don't know if they could.
because they also enjoy African music. African music is spiritual.
Yeah.
It's not canon. What you're singing is not just something that is pleasing to you. It brings a lot of memories. It rekindles a lot of spirits. It's something that looks mystical. African music is not a casual music. It's a message either to the gods or from the gods, or something that is inspired by something that is metaphysical. So it's not
Yeah.
something that people cannot canalize. You can't canalize African music. It's authentic, it is unique, and it communicates something. So when you try to banalize African music, the elders will always say this is not music. This is some of those casual songs that you use in passing time.
So music is like a way for this sort of human realm to connect with this sort of deeper mystical, deeper
Yeah,
reality. I know you studied philosophy, so it's like
yeah,
you're getting in there, but it's also an
yeah.
active thing. In a lot of countries, people consume music, they listen to music, but they don't sing themselves. They don't dance themselves. Some people do, but it seems like it's more common in Africa for people to actually participate actively in the music to make it themselves. But also, it's this sort of tool for connecting with some deeper reality within your body, but also in the world. It's not just entertainment or something cool or fun.
Sorry, have you tried to meditate on music? Some certain spiritual music like reggae. Do you know about reggae? The reggae music? Have you listened to reggae?
Yeah, yeah, I love reggae music. Actually, yesterday I went to this. There's this Hindu event. Yesterday it was a chanting event, and so we were all chanting
Okay.
together. I didn't really enjoy uh, the ideas about love, love, love. It sounded like he was pulling things out of his butt. But I did
Yeah.
enjoy the physiological side of that event where we were chanting together. There was drums and instruments, singing, and I was my eyes were closed the whole time. I was not. Everyone else had their cameras out. They're taking pictures of it and stuff. But I'm going off on a little tangent here. But yeah, yeah. I do close my eyes to certain like Indian chants, some relaxing electronic music. I haven't really tried the African stuff, but maybe I should.
Think you should, and I'll be inviting you for our event in Lagos. So there are a lot of things that has to do with music. Music, it should be something that you need to meditate upon, reflect upon, and see the images you grasp while reflecting and meditating on them. So it's something that is not just for you, even the person that is singing it, because you are sending a message to the audience, and the way it impacts people also defines the music. So it's not more about the lyrics, but how the lyrics impact people. So the message you're putting out there, very important. So I that's one thing with African traditional melody, and it has evolved to become things like what we call Afrobeat. There is Afrobeat. There is also Amapiano from South Africa, making a lot of sense. Amapiano beat. It's really really becoming big, and kudos to Amapiano and Afrobeat. It's championed by Nigerians and Ghanaians and Cameroonians, and it was the king of Afrobeat is Fela Kuti. And Fela Kuti is late, and so that's it. So there are a lot of things. You go to there is this bongo music. bongo music, there is bongo, there is high life, and all that. So it's these are the key, you know. I bring a simulation of bongo and high life in composing in either time or beat signature or whatever the case may be, to make sure that I get the flair of what I really need, right? So that's it.
I have this idea that making certain sounds, expressing our voice in certain ways, also has healing powers. I don't want to say that some languages are better than others, but I do feel that some languages are more expressive than others, and they allow us to use our body more freely, but also express our ideas more freely. I don't know if this is something you've thought about, but I mean, you are kind of a philosopher too, so perhaps you have. What impact do you feel the African languages? I know there's like lots of them, but have on our health, and I imagine it must be kind of similar to this whole music thing we're talking about. But I have no idea. Talk about language if you have any ideas there. I mean, the language itself, the sounds and the meanings and the expressiveness and all of that kind of stuff.
Okay, one of my best philosopher when it comes to philosophy of language is Ludwig Wittgenstein.
Yeah.
A German philosopher. He spoke about language as a game, and in his work Tractatus Logico Philosophicus and the Philosophical Investigation, he tried to explain some of these key functionalities of language. So the music connects better when you sing them in the language you understand, in traditional languages. So when a Zulu man or a Zulu woman in Europe or America hears a song in Zulu, it sends a message. Maybe the person hasn't listened to the lyrics. You see the person, we have a kind of goosebumps. When I, wherever I am, when I hear an Igbo sound and then hear the lyrics from Igbo, I don't care what they are singing, it resonates differently. So there is a kind of a sync when you listen to music in the traditional language and when you understand the traditional language. How? Because the music is coming from your cosmology and your spirit is attuned with your cosmology. It's resonant. There is a lot that it resonates deeply, not just on a physical level, but a metaphysical level. Because of course we know that man is a composite being of material and form, and the spirit is the form, the form. So there is this connection, and when you see that the expression in the philosophy of art and aesthetics, so there is always an aesthetic experience and attitude when you perceive it, and you have that experience that you feel because you've perceived something. It creates an impression in your mind, and you now have an understanding of it. Then you have to express it. So aesthetic experience and attitude comes with expressionism. So when you express those things, you dance, you smile, and when you smile, it gives you a kind of healing. It's therapeutic, right? You want to show. Sometimes when you listen to music that resonate with you, want to express. You remember your environment, and you be like, no, I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't want to embarrass people, or maybe considering the things you have at hand at that time. So music for us has to also do with expressionism because it creates an impression, and the expression is therapeutic, brings healing, and it does a lot in the mind of the person that perceived it. So language there becomes key, especially it helps in conveying the message better, and it helps you to connect to your or with your spirit self.
I guess I have to ask this question. I don't mean to ask these big questions right here at the end, but like, what is sort of the view of reality, view of sort of this human realm? connected to the spirit realm, the body, the mind, me, and others. What's sort of that the general African philosophy? And I don't know if you can sum it up because Africa is so diverse. But what is sort of the way that Africans generally, or at least traditionally, thought of the body, the mind, the spirit realm, each other, and how all these things kind of connect or don't connect?
It's a big question, but I'll try. This
Yeah.
pure metaphysics and a kind of African philosophy. Yes, I wouldn't like to embarrass my professor, Professor Izuma Salonyocha. He's still alive, and he's one of the greatest African philosophers alive. So you can't actually reality is really composed of two separate entities, and body and soul. And even in basic metaphysics, Aristotle agreed with that, Plato agreed with that. So I have to reference them because they all came to Africa to study, and they came to Alexandria, Egypt to study, and they must have learned that in Africa. So the spirit, the spiritual self transcends the physical self, but there is always a necessary connection between the physical, the material, and the spiritual. So, man by nature being a composite being means that we have the body and the soul, or what people call the material and the form, in the words of Plato. But however, in Africa, Africans don't see death as end of existence. They see it as an end to a new beginning. So by that I mean that the belief that we have ancestors, we have the underworld, we have a lot of things, but only those that lived well becomes ancestors. So there are a lot of things that has to do with that, and that we need to also act well to, and when we misbehave, we do things wrongly, our ancestors get angry, and they might punish us because we are not living in accordance with the law. So the ancestors will always want you to live morally, be good, and to love one another. So it's very important for us, and that's why there is always rites and necessary rituals to appease the ancestors, and to live properly, and to live morally upright and good. So that's it with the metaphysical understanding of Africa's and their ancestors, the spirit self, and all that. So it's also important that every human person of African descent live morally upright. Ethics is very fundamental for Africans. Morality is very fundamental, and you do not use your fellow human as a means to an end. Yes, very important. So you see them as an end in itself. So you need to treat them with love, compassion, and all. So the ethics and morality are the hinge towards that helps in coherence with the physical and the metaphysical. So they are the hinge that helps us to assess the metaphysical. So you can only do that when you are an upright person.
And the way we eat, the way we move, the way we socialize, the way we do anything affects our relationship with our ancestors, with the divine, with each other. It's all kind of
Yeah.
intertwined, it seems. So, health and ethics and I guess religion and stuff, they're all kind of, health seems to be kind of a part of it, or is it? It seems like it is.
What's this culture? Culture is the total way of life of a people, right? So culture is also part of biodiversity. And because it's the total way of life of a people, it means that holistically, all that you do, you must do it in accordance with your culture, and you must do it right. Right? So because other aspect of culture, you should talk about types of culture. You'll be talking about things like food is an example. Talk about religion is also an example. And there is always these necessary connections. And when you talk about for Judo Christians, or they talk about Last Supper, they prepare the Last Supper with what they eat, right? The Jews, what they eat. And it's also prevalent in their tradition, which in their religion, which was also later adopted by the Romans. And you see things like Roman Catholic, they still use the chalice and ciborium for consecration and all that. So when you come to Africa, right, they want to make sacrifices. They use the cow or ram, they grill it, they use it for sacrifices. So the priest and the Levite also, we eat those things, right? They cook it late after making sacrifices, the pouring the libation, they still use the remains, they roast them, they use it to prepare meal, and they eat those things. You understand what I mean? So they don't waste it. So that's it. So there are necessary connections with regards to um, food, culture, music, and all that. So it's just they're intertwined. They're like rag bag of same discipline.
Well, we talked about a lot of great features and tools and unfortunately problems, but we need to talk about the problems of things like movement and nutrition and music and mindset, education, medical systems, all kinds of very important and useful stuff if we can get it right, or very harmful stuff if we don't get it right. Were there any other things that I missed that you were hoping to talk about that I just skipped over?
Now I think we've really exhausted. Maybe next time we'll also look at things to discuss about. There are also things that we can consider talking about, the the healthcare sector, and maybe the origin
Yeah.
of medicine, in how if Africa is the origin of humanity, how then are people coming back to help Africans, and how then did people think that Africans are not getting it right, and why would they want to teach Africans on how to get it right since Africa is the origin of humanity? So these are the logics that we need to unpack maybe next time in this
Yeah.
wonderful conversation.
That's great. You left us with a cliffhanger, like R.L. Stein. I don't know if you had those books over there, but I loved those books. Cliffhangers, yes. So listen in for the next one. Any final message that if we listen to nothing else from today, you would like to send to the world? My podcast only reaches so far. I can only control that so much. But yeah, imagine you are talking to the world right now and be like, this is the only two sentences or five sentences you're going to hear today. Yeah, what would that be?
So I would tell the world that they should embrace their culture, and they should love their culture and tradition. They should embrace that which preserve their ancestors, and they should eat naturally. They should avoid processed food. They should also avoid added sugar. They should love one another and to live in peace and harmony. Having a difficult conversation is more better than going into war or having crisis, because we need to preserve our species, and we need to understand that life is the chief value. Because life is the chief value, it is precious. We need to handle it with care, and the best way to do that is to love one another and to embrace a better social connection, and to understand that vulnerability is strength, that even if vulnerability is seen as weakness by the other, weakness is not wickedness. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'm inspired, I'm motivated, I'm educated. I'm looking forward to digging into some of this African music and other things that you mentioned. And it's good to see that this image that the the West has painted for the West about Africa, that it's this place where people just get sick and they're they don't live long. They've got all these problems and diseases, and that's like it's this mess. There might be that, but you've shown me that yeah, maybe there was also some false advertisement on that side. Yeah, diseases do exist. We This is maybe something we'll talk about next time. But yeah, thank you for sort of shining the light on the reality a bit, and also opening up all these new avenues for anybody inside or outside of Africa to explore things like music and nutrition and dance and social connection and beyond. Thank you so much, Osinakachi. See you next time.
Yeah, thank you for having me, guy.